So a very good evening on behalf of XLRI. It's pleasure to have you with us. So the topic would be when flexibility becomes a habit which others starts expecting. So here a brief about this topic is we are not going to discuss whether flexibility is good or bad. It's about when it doesn't trespass the the recipient's comfort zone. So here I will give just two examples so that I am not labeled as a spoilsport person. It's something like employees staying late or a customer asking for customization free of cost. So we'll begin with couple of examples that you would have encountered in your corporate life which we can label as flexibility, and then we would start some other discussion pointers. So begin with a couple of examples which comes under this label called flexibility, which becomes a habit which others starts expecting with you one by one.
So flexibility, but it all depends how you want to take it as a flexibility. Because if, as you rightly said, somebody who's keeping late, as you said, it's a half truth only. He's keeping late. Whether he's coming early and coming late, it depends. If somebody is coming early and going late, if the work demands, I'll say it's not flexibility, it's required. But somebody is just staying late because somebody has told him to be there, कि तेरे को phone करूँगा, then you have to be there, then that's something, again we'll go back to the previous topics wala, that's favorism. It's not something which is required. If the job demands, you have to be there. If job is something that can be closed within that less time also, you should close it and walk off. No point in staying late night in the office.
So couple of examples, no, on different dimensions apart from staying late, customers asking for free.
I mean, it's also very situational, right? Like he said. So example could be, okay, the organization needs this just this one time, and from a larger set of people, not that one person is being asked to do something, be flexible all the time, as opposed to, okay, this is an organizational need. All of us have to be flexible. I think, being rigid doesn't help anyone, including yourself, your team, your peers, or the organization. It also should not be taken for granted that, okay, iski to flexibility हमेशा ही रहेगी, or I can ask him anything and everything. So as long as, right, they say, somewhere I read, it says the shortest and the oldest words are yes and no, and the most amount of thought which needs to be given are to these two words. And I think that judgment of where you are really being flexible on a positive side, whereas versus where that flexibility starts treating you other ways is very, very key.
I agree, and I think flexibility can be viewed in both ways. While it is really good to be flexible, like if someone has to grow in their profession, unless you're flexible, how will you upskill yourself? How will you be open to learning more, taking on new responsibilities rather than being stuck in my comfort zone? If I'm not a flexible person, I'll never want to do something beyond what I'm currently doing. Yeah. And likewise, for a leader that is probably giving a task or something that needs to be accomplished, it goes both ways. But like you said, it's where you draw the line for both. So if I am flexible as a person, I'm also growing because I'm doing new things, I'm taking new opportunities. But the day I feel that I'm being taken for granted, I should be able to voice it out. And at the same time, as an employer, if there's a set of some people who are high performers, so some are high performing because they like to do it and they want to be there, and there are some that struggle to get there and they want to get to that level. And at that point, we have to identify that they are beyond what is expected out of them, and we be able to then change the narrative for them and lower their load. So I feel like it falls on both sides. Otherwise, then it gets into a different state of flexibility where it could be not used in the right way. Yeah.
I mean, from our end, once again, we have done the one side and then now we move to other side, right? The working late, coming early, those are all I would probably call it as very low end. I think when the organization has got some defined rules and regulations, right? And how do you deviate from that? I mean, you might call it as flexibility or someone might want to use it. For example, a simple travel policy, right? It varies from whether you can go on the morning flight and come back in the evening flight and avoiding a hotel, or someone going the previous night, staying in a hotel and then coming back next flight. So when we had such flexible policy, we didn't have a policy, but expectation was that, okay, you don't need to spend money on a hotel unless you go and, if there's a morning flight, you come back by evening. People start using it automatically, going the previous night, staying in a hotel, right? So then you start thinking about, okay, should I put a policy framework, right? So I think somewhere when you don't have that guided policy, I think irrespective of whether it's high performer or low performer, I would say a culture has to be formed only by defining certain policies. I mean, just because someone is doing well, we cannot change the culture of the firm, then people start misusing it. Is that probably I would put that way.
So one more example so that we can look at the whole sketch of what we mean by flexibility apart from traveling, any other policy that you saw,
So,
so that we get at least 20 of such,
so
different
the other
shapes.
policy which we had, the previous topic was gifts, right, or favors, right? Very common in our industry. I'm sure most of us would say Diwali gifts and that and this, right? So how do you define it, right? Should I accept a 5,000 rupees gift or a 500 rupees gift or a 50,000 rupees gift? So we put a policy saying that irrespective whether you get a chocolate box, you come and put it in the reception. No, because we couldn't do it because as a senior person, I might get a 50,000 rupees gift. One of my junior person might get a 5,000 rupees gift, right? Where do you draw a line, right? Because the person who's sending the gift obviously is trying to create those challenges. So we took a policy framework saying that irrespective of, though we had a policy that you cannot accept certain things, but when people were getting it, we didn't know what to do beyond a point. We said, okay, as a policy, irrespective of what you get, put it in the reception, right? That way, then people start saying no to accepting this, right? So,
Very good example.
So it is interesting. When I heard flexibility, I didn't think of task management or process. I was thinking more in terms of decision making. Since I'm in marketing in an FMCG company, for me, flexibility, we usually say that you're flexible or he's flexible, she is flexible when they are ready to sort of, you can call it compromise uh, on their stand for the sake of things moving forward, or ready to take a middle path so that things move forward. For example, if we are developing a new product and there are two different routes we can take, there are multiple stakeholders who are weighing in. The job of the marketing manager very often is to be flexible enough to incorporate multiple views, even though it might dilute the original stance or the original proposal. That's a that's actually a strength in that sense. When it becomes weakness is when they do it so often that it becomes a hollow shell of the original idea, and that becomes that enters into the spineless territory. So it's a very fine line which a marketing manager always needs to do, how much flexible they want to be and towards which direction.
So one is new product development. What could be the other domains where you would have seen this flexibility?
When we are managing a tactical sales driven activity, or we are doing a more strategic brand building activity, that's the typical call. And we could take it at a larger level, but I'm trying to take it at a more daily operational level. You have to allocate time and resources and say no to a sales guy who is very aggressive, which is very difficult, and you end up saying no to your own task, saying I can manage it later, maybe at night, but let me do this one first.
So that's kind of trade-off that you have in
That
sales
trade-off
promotion.
is there.
So I'll look at flexibility as a behavioral aspect rather than a policy aspect. Um, so there's this mid-level leader who's extremely ambitious, quite capable, and the ambition sort of prompted the individual to keep on accepting tasks which they were interested in, and they were doing well. So one, from an organizational perspective, from an individual perspective, the capability shown. That may not have happened had the person stood rigid to the immediate task or the immediate job description, right? So that was good. But fairly soon, it reached a stage where we ran the risk of that individual getting burnt out, with the individual not even probably noticing it because they were so ambitious and keen that they were take it on. And that required an outside-in perspective from the senior leader, suggesting that you can still prove your ability without necessarily burning yourself out. Which was taken on board, and then the balance was arrived at. The other aspect is, I think, just building on what we just heard, from a leadership perspective, if you don't carry the flexibility, you run the risk of not sort of encouraging the best suggestions and ideas to come forward, with the final decision, of course, staying with the senior leader, right? So I think to build a culture where that flexibility is maintained, that you go in with a certain viewpoint but are open to listening and altering your viewpoint insofar as the best outcome comes, I think is a flexibility that is necessary as a leader to carry.
See, I think flexibility, for the purposes of this conversation, we're looking at it as a North Star. Flexibility cannot be given who's the person expecting it. Flexibility cannot be expected while losing sight of outcomes, right? So I think we have to first triangulate what is our definition of flexibility for the purpose of this conversation. As somebody who's responsible for business development, practice development, and growth in a consulting practice, for me, flexibility is about where I build my team from, what are the projects I choose to execute, while ensuring that my top line, bottom line, and engagement margin are in track.
Correct.
That's flexibility for me.
So over here, I'll give you two examples. But before that, first you have to understand, when do you have to be flexible? I think in what part or phase of that journey, I think it's more of a give and take policy here also. So two examples from my life experience is that one is in the agro business, is that now if my salesperson is doing really well, right, and I'm like he mentioned that, if the person is more aggressive, how flexible are you to encourage him or motivate him, and the other persons involved, like dealers, distributors, to take things ahead and not affecting your balance sheet, right? So that's point number one in agro business, where you are like, okay, we can consider a few points. And yes, coming to the alcohol sector, is that the job description says that the person has to be flexible, is again because again travel is one point. Second point is that, so we have regular events. Now, example, on a Wednesday night you have a karaoke event or a ladies night event. Now the job says that that you are responsible of that event, so you have to be present. That event may get over at, let us say, 12, 1 in the morning, but then again next day is a working day. So am I flexible to give a day off, or am I rigid that no, you have to get back to work? So that's there. And again, I'm like, we are like, okay, now you may be required elsewhere. If not, who else, right? So again, there are different forms where you could look into this. But then again, I believe it's more of a give and take policy over here. And what phase or maybe what journey are you at? That you have to let go of yourself and and be more open to the team.